By November 2015, the Ministry of Health of Brazil declared a public health emergency because there were anywhere from 500,000 to almost 1.5 million Zika virus cases in Brazil, with 5,000 suspected cases of microcephaly. Women were even, in fact, encouraged to not get pregnant during this time period because they may put their unborn fetuses at risk. It was also determined that males suffering from Zika virus shed the Zika virus in their semen. Thus, Zika virus can also be transmitted by sexual contact. Some of the first cases in the United States were in fact transmitted this way. From March 2015 to March 2018, a total of over 2,000 pregnancies in the United States were associated with Zika virus. Of these, over 100 had congenital Zika syndrome, with 9 miscarriages linked to the virus. There's still no antiviral therapy to treat Zika virus infections, nor any vaccine to prevent it. The Zika virus has currently ended in Brazil for the time being, and hopefully vaccines that are currently in research will be formed and generated and available for dissemination at the next sign of an outbreak. The next disease that we'd like to cover is chikungunya. Before 2013, chikungunya was only a rare occurrence in Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Islands. It's also a virus transmitted through the mosquito Aedes aegypti. In January 2014, U.S. authorities started reporting cases of chikungunya from travelers returning from the Caribbean. Again, no vaccine exists to combat or prevent this disease, and there is no treatment. And so the best way is to avoid infection from the virus by avoiding mosquito bites. Symptoms of chikungunya include high fever, headache, photophobia, which is sensitivity to light, and rash. Most individuals complain of severe joint pain that is incapacitating and sometimes crippling, causing them to bend over in pain as they walk. This is in fact where the name comes from. Chikungunya is from the Swahili kugunyala, which refers to the stooped posture of those infected. The mortality rate of this disease is fairly low, but in about 10 to 60% of patients, they end up with crippling and lingering arthritis symptoms that can persist up to 3 to 5 years. Our next viral disease transmitted by, again, mosquitoes of the Aedes genus is dengue fever. Dengue fever is an infection caused by one of 4 different dengue viruses. It's usually mild and self-limiting. However, in cases where somebody is infected with one version of dengue virus, followed by later in life at any point in time a second different dengue virus, they can acquire what's known as dengue hemorrhagic fever. This symptom is serious and potentially fatal. The condition is manifested by hemorrhages occurring in the skin, gums, and other areas within the body. Shock may develop in the patient, requiring immediate treatment to prevent death, and even with intensive supported measures, as many as 40% of those infected with dengue a second time may die. There is no immunization against any of the 4 dengue virus strains, though there are vaccines in development. The next virus that we'll cover is yellow fever. Yellow fever is also transmitted by mosquitoes, again by Aedes aegypti. It used to be common in many countries around the world, including the United States, but as a result of mosquito control measures and people spending more time indoors, yellow fever has been completely eliminated. The disease is still present, however, in areas of South America, Central America, and Africa, where monkeys in the jungle serve as reservoirs. Yellow fever can be seen as beginning with a fever, then a bloody nose, headache, nausea, muscle pain, vomiting, and jaundice. It's the jaundice from which the disease gets its name. In about a week, the infected individual is either dead or in the process of recovery. Thankfully, there is a vaccine to combat yellow fever, and the vaccine can help protect individuals from acquiring this disease. The history of the Panama Canal is in fact linked with many deaths associated with yellow fever and malaria. The Panama Canal was a triumph of engineering and ended up resulting in quite a number of deaths of workers infected with yellow fever and malaria from mosquito-borne diseases. West Nile virus is another disease that's caused by a virus that's transmitted by mosquitoes. In this case, the mosquito transmits the virus from bird to mammal. West Nile can cause West Nile encephalitis. The virus's origins are in Egypt and Israel, and the West Nile virus is in fact named after the Nile River. It is not certain how the West Nile virus came to the United States, but it's believed that it probably came in a bird or mosquito transported on a jet aircraft. The mosquito spraying abatement measures of cities and areas that have reported West Nile outbreaks help a long way in breaking the transmission cycle. However, West Nile has subsequently spread in the last few years to areas of Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and all over continental United States. Most cases of West Nile virus that cause symptoms occur in older adults, and this usually happens in the summer when humans, mosquitoes, and migratory birds are in close proximity. West Nile virus affects older patients more severely. It's been detected in over 300 bird species, especially in crows and jays. Reporting of dead birds is a great way to check for the presence of West Nile virus in the environment. If West Nile is noticed in the environment, cities usually spray insecticide or chemicals that kill mosquitoes over cities during the nighttime while people sleep in order to kill the mosquitoes in the environment. About 1 in 5 people infected with West Nile virus develops a fever and other symptoms, and about 1 in 150 people develops a serious, sometimes fatal illness. In 2017, 2,002 cases and 121 deaths were reported in the continental United States, the majority of which were in California. We will now spend the rest of the lecture talking about prion diseases. It is important to recognize that prion diseases are not viruses and in fact are a totally separate class of pathogen. Prions are infectious proteins, a single molecule that can replicate inside cells and cause a number of neurodegenerative diseases in animals and humans, referred to as transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. Transmissible because they can be transmitted from organism to organism, and spongiform encephalopathy because the brain tissue takes on a spongy look, or in other words, has many holes in it like Swiss cheese. The first human TSC discovered was Kuru. Kuru is a disease of the Foray people in Papua New Guinea, and it was transmitted from person to person by practices of ritualistic cannibalism, where people would eat the organ tissue of loved ones out of respect for the dead. But unfortunately, The prion disease was also transmitted that way. TSCs are characterized by long incubation periods of several years, but once the symptoms develop, the condition progresses rapidly and is fatal, usually within a year. There is no cure. Treatment is only supportive until the end of life. Prions do not evoke any immune response and are usually resistant to disinfection, meaning it's really difficult to eliminate from the environment and also cannot be treated by any medicine or the immune system. The prion disease that has created the most awareness is bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or prion disease found in cows. This is otherwise referred to as mad cow disease. Mad cow disease came on the scene and began to be noticed in 1986, when there was an outbreak of BSE, better known as mad cow disease, in the United Kingdom. There, in the United Kingdom, or Great Britain, BSE was noticed in pastures by ranchers because the cows that suffered from BSE exhibited some unusual symptoms, including being unable or unwilling to stand for longer than 12 hours, changes in temperament, kicking when being milked, incoordination, difficulty walking, hanging their head low, high-stepping hind leg gait, skin tremors, and weight loss. There were nearly 200,000 confirmed cases of BSE in cattle in the United Kingdom, leading to more than 5 million cattle being slaughtered and their corpses burned as a result of fear of this disease being transmitted to other cattle. It is a lot less common in North America and the United States, with only 25 infected cows being identified as having BSE. Most of these were imported from other countries. BSE is also a similar disease found in sheep and elk and mink and some deer. In sheep, this disease is called scrapie because the animals constantly scrape themselves against trees and fencing. And in elk, mink, and deer, the prion disease is referred to as chronic wasting disease, of particular relevance to hunters that may end up hunting and consuming the deer and elk. In humans, prion disease takes on a variety of different forms. There's Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD, and variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or VCJD. Nearly all cases of Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease are a result of sporadic incidents, which is just random generation of the disease in the brain tissue. There are a few cases that are due to hereditary predisposition in a disease known as fatal familial insomnia, in which case the prion disease is inherited from relatives. And then finally, there are a few cases where CJD is transmitted by corneal transplants or through surgical equipment. Variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, on the other hand, is transmitted to people by prion-contaminated beef, or tissue that has BSE in it. In our last and final section of this chapter, we're going to explore variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease.